Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today. I am excited to hear about your unique perspective on course creation. You're the CEO of Scale with Success, and you help online creators and course creators learn how to take their course and make a seven-figure business out of it. But you didn't get there overnight, right? A lot of lessons learned. And you had a real breaking point moment that helped you, I think, uncover this new path. So, can you take us back to that time and tell us about Scale with Success?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my business as a freelancer. So I was freelancing as a social media manager. I did the posting and the scheduling and the content creation for different businesses. And after I'd done that for a while, I decided that I thought it would be more fun to go into consulting. So I would help people plan out their social media strategy, and then they would be responsible for implementing it. And after I did that for a while, I realized that I was really going over the same kind of principles and strategy over each call that I was making with various clients. And so I thought it would be kind of cool if I could take, the process that I was leading people through on these calls and package it into a course. And so the very first course I sold was all about social media. I made a lot of very common mistakes that many course creators make with that course. But even though I was making so many mistakes, people absolutely loved it. And I really enjoyed delivering it. And over the years, I sold a variety of different courses. One of my other courses was all about Facebook groups. Another course that I sold was all about how to grow your audience on Instagram. And while I was selling those courses, over time, I found myself really feeling trapped. I felt myself feeling trapped financially. My income was stuck. Like I had kind of reached a revenue ceiling that I couldn't seem to break through. And I also felt trapped in terms of my time freedom. So an example of that is I remember one time I was, preparing for one of the big launches that I was doing, because all I ever heard about was that I needed to launch. And so I thought that was the only way to grow a successful online course business. So I was in the midst of preparing for that launch, and I accidentally forgot to pick up my kindergartner from school. And, my daughter is 12 now. So or 13 now. And so if I forgot to pick her up, it would not be a big deal now. However, at the time, she was completely devastated. And kind of to make matters worse, I had, it was an early dismissal day. I had told her, you know what, I'm going to pick you up early. We're going to go to the park. We're going to get ice cream. Because honestly, in the weeks and months leading up to that early dismissal day, I had not been very present at all, because I was so heads down focused on preparing for this big launch. So that day at the park didn't happen. I was heads down focused on rewriting all the launch copy that I had, the sales page, the emails, everything over and over again. And I just completely lost track of time. And my phone rang. And when I saw it was the school calling, I instantly realized my mistake. I rushed to school. She was in tears. She was very upset. And I just remember in that moment feeling like I'm done. Like I'm prepared to walk away from everything. Like this is not going to work. Right. And it wasn't until a couple months later when I joined a mastermind. There were a lot of different course creators in there and all kinds of different niches. And I met this one guy who he was selling an online course that was all about how to declutter your home. And he was making, over $300,000 per month from selling his course without launching. And I had never even heard of something like that happening before. I thought launching was it. I thought it was the only way. And there was this whole other world out there of, ways, strategies, methods that people were using to sell their course that I wasn't even aware of. And so just being able to, talk to him, and he was like showing me his data, showed me kind of, walked me through all of his numbers. And in that moment, I realized this is what I want to do. Like, this is how I want to start selling my courses. I want to stop launching. I want to get off that roller coaster and instead sell my courses with an evergreen model. And, I definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way, learned from them. But over time, I realized that this was something that I wanted to teach other people. And so for the last 7 years, we've been selling this program that we have now, Scale with Success. And it's all about, how to sell your own course on autopilot.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's so compelling because we as moms, we need time freedom, we need flexibility. I mean, we for those early pickup days, for those sick days, for all of the other obligations that we have and the unexpected things that come up all the time. But you mentioned, the launch was such a focus for you, and I think so many online creators have this illusion of that is the only way to succeed, just like you did. So, why do you think so many online course creators get stuck on that treadmill? And what is it really costing them?
So one of the things that I've learned over the years of selling many different courses is that there are so many different ways of doing something. There is no one right way to do something. And so there are people out there who love launching and it works for them.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's great. They should totally keep doing it. But if it doesn't work for you mentally, physically or financially, there are other ways that you can do something. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about sharing this evergreen method with people
Mhm.
is that, I know that there's someone out there listening who has never even heard of evergreen, or maybe
Yeah.
they've kind of heard it in passing, but they don't fully understand what
Mhm.
actually even means. And so absolutely love talking about it because I want to be the voice for that person, just like that one guy was for me all those years ago, where he was like, hey, there's actually this like whole other world, there's a other way of doing something that you can definitely go to if you want to.
Right. Yeah. And, we're just staying in this stuck place if you're not, you're stressed, overwhelmed, and limiting your income. And yeah, so I mean, there is so much to unpack there because, some of the strategy, but it's not all about strategy. I think so much of what keeps us stuck, and I love to really emphasize, is our mindset. Really,
Yeah.
it's just our limiting beliefs are just so much of what keeps us blocked. So, what are some of the biggest fears and doubts you had was pivoting to this new type of way of selling your course, and how did you overcome that?
So before I talk about kind of there were definitely some big fears and there were
Mhm.
definitely some limiting beliefs.
Sure.
Before I talk about that, I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what it actually means to launch.
Mm.
So there's a big difference between launching and selling your course evergreen.
Mhm.
There's when it comes to selling your course online, growing your business, those are the two basic models. There's the launch model and then there's the evergreen model. So when you are launching, here's what that typically looks like, right? And as I'm telling this, you're probably going to all of a sudden, I know your listeners out there are going to start to have ideas about what some of those mindset shifts that I had to make are. So when it comes to launching, it typically requires, 2 to 3 months of intense list building and content distribution that is leading up to what's called an open cart. And the open cart is the period of time when you are allowing people to enroll in your course. And it can last anywhere between 5 to 7 days. But then nobody can buy your course until your next launch, which is typically 6 months later or a year later. And what many course creators, including myself, found is that when the launch ends, so does all of the momentum and the excitement that you've really been working so hard to generate. And it's basically radio silence until you begin the launch cycle all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very high risk way of selling your course, especially
Mm-hmm.
for course creators who are making less than $1 million a year. They have a tiny team or no team at all.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell people all the time is that if your course is generating less than $1 million a year, the number one that you really need to learn how to do is to learn how to generate consistent revenue so that you can start to get some real traction in your business. Now, with an evergreen model, this allows you to enroll students into your programs, new students into your programs on an ongoing basis, not just once or twice a year, which is great because that means you're able to generate consistent revenue. You're able to be in a position where you can grow over time. It's kind of like the analogy I like to give is a snowball. So with launching, it's like go, stop, go, stop,
Yeah.
go, stop, right? So you're building that momentum, that snowball's getting bigger, but then you stop. And then the sun comes out and the snowball melts. And then you're starting at square one all over again, 6 months or a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're selling with an evergreen model, you're rolling your snowball in the in the snow, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And you're able to then really build some momentum in your business so that it can carry you through.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who, don't have big teams, big tech budgets, big ads budgets, that momentum is crucial, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I tell people like, build out that evergreen funnel in your business so you are able to bring in new customers. And then later on, once you have a big team, once you have a big ads budget, if you want to get fancy and you want to try a launch, if you want to try an in-person event, if you want to build out your team like this, that, and the other, you'll have the freedom to do it because you took the time of building out that evergreen funnel from the start, and that is kind of running in the background. Now, the mindset of going into a launch is very high pressure, and it has to be because it's like kind of do or die, right? If that launch does not go well, if you are putting time, energy, and resources from your business for 2 to 3 months, not making any money, but crossing your fingers that 2 to 3 months later when you launch, hoping and praying that it will convert and you'll make enough money to then get you through the next 6 months or a year or whatever, right? It is so much pressure. And when people make the shift from launching to selling, with an evergreen model, a lot of times they bring that same energy and thinking into preparing for evergreen. And so they put a lot of pressure on themselves, and so I have to talk to my clients a lot about that, and to really make sure that I'm explaining like, hey, when you turn on your funnel, that's just the beginning. Like no matter how well things go that first week that your funnel is on, things keep getting better and better. And you keep, looking at the data, figuring out what you want to tweak, what you want to shift, what needs to be optimized next, because it's always on, it's always running. So you always have an opportunity to practice that. So that is the biggest like mindset shift when it comes to building funnels and things like that versus launching, is that it's not a one and done thing. Consistent revenue means that you are consistently looking at the data, making changes, figuring out what the next thing to do is. And that really, really requires people to effectively manage their emotions, right? And that is hard to do, especially for me, who has lots of big feelings and, and I love that about myself. And what I tell people is you don't have to change that. Managing your emotions is not about turning into some kind of like a robot. It's about learning and understanding and being aware of when you feel yourself kind of starting to spiral and letting yourself know, oh, you know what, I'm doing that thing again. This is actually not based on reality. It's
Mm.
that thing that my brain does sometimes. It's okay for me to actually let go of that and move my attention into, focusing on the outcome I want to create and taking steps towards that.
I think between, and correct me if I'm wrong, but having Evergreen and launching, the difference, one other difference is that you're not creating that um, need for urgency the same way,
It's
because
different.
people don't act unless there is like a sense of urgency. So that's part of the motivation, and that's part of the high intensity and
Mhm.
all of the pressure is trying to create that sense of urgency to take action, because mere mortals don't do that unless they
Yeah.
are kind of pushed to.
Yeah, and it's not only about creating urgency for the audience, it's creating
Mhm.
urgency for yourself
Mm,
because you have 6 days to make enough revenue to last you through 6 months or a year. Like
right.
that is urgent. Like there is urgency to do that.
Right.
And like for most people, life can throw a lot of different things at you at
Mhm.
times. And
Mhm.
especially if you have a family, and I feel like, at least for me, being able to use an evergreen model was just a lot more conducive to meeting not just the revenue goals that I wanted to hit, but also the kind of like lifestyle goals that I had, and that I wanted to be able to, volunteer for my daughter's field trips and, uh, host play dates and do things for myself as well. Go out, go on dates with my husband, all these different things. And I wasn't able to do it otherwise.
Right. It is such a shift, but I'm sure in working with your clients, you hear lots of misconceptions, and there are
Mm.
a lot of things that people misunderstand. Like, can somebody sign up for your program with zero followers and zero
Mhm.
email lists? So, talk to me about some of the misconceptions that you hear about.
So, one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear is that people think that all they have to do is take the content that they used during a live launch. Maybe it
Mhm.
was a live webinar, maybe it was the emails, the sales page, all of that. And all they have to do is just kind of flip a switch and repurpose it
Mm.
into an automated funnel. And
Mhm.
you said something a little bit ago that, well, you said many things that were smart, but you said one thing that was really, really
Aw.
smart. And it was that there is a difference between selling live and
Mm.
selling evergreen. The
Mm.
buyer's journey is completely different in
Mhm.
a live launch than it is in an evergreen funnel. And
Mhm.
so if you are repurposing what worked live into an evergreen funnel, you
Mm.
might make a sale or two, but you're not going to get anywhere near those 5 or 6 figure months.
Mhm.
But everyone needs to know is that it takes different content frameworks and vice versa. What works well live is not going to work well evergreen, and what you're doing evergreen is not going to work well live. And it kills
Mhm.
me. I see so many people
Mm.
trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, trying
Mm.
to repurpose their content. It doesn't work. And
Mhm.
they make that mean that evergreen just won't work for them. Or they say things like, well, I guess my audience will only buy with the launch. Like I tried evergreen and it didn't work.
Mm.
But ultimately, when I talked to them about what they were trying when they were go evergreen, they're just using the wrong strategy. And once you're able to shift your strategy and put a round peg in a round hole, things really start clicking. And I know that, a lot of people have this idea in their head, oh, I have to launch X amount of times in order to go evergreen, or, oh, I have to build up a big list first before
Mhm.
I start selling evergreen. And it's not true. Now, if you're launching, you have to build a big list in advance, right?
Mhm.
That's about that like 2 to 3 month period that I told you about earlier, where
Mhm.
you're just working on trying to build your email list. But with Evergreen, that's not true, because
Mhm.
with Evergreen, you are building your email list and you're selling all at the same time. So someone is joining your list and buying your course within
Mhm.
like a 24-hour period.
Mhm.
So when you are starting to sell Evergreen, you don't need to have a list yet. You don't need to have a big social media following. You don't need any of that. And I get it. I understand again why people have those thoughts, because it's like taking what worked while launching and trying to just fit it into an evergreen model, but it's
Mhm.
completely different. Like you talked
Mhm.
a little bit about urgency before. Another example that I would give is, when it comes to a live webinar versus an evergreen webinar.
Mhm.
If you're doing a live webinar, you're there to answer questions. And so you may deliberately say something during that live webinar that you know
Mhm.
is really going to promote curiosity, maybe even a little bit of confusion, because you want to prompt the audience to then ask the question in that
Mhm.
moment, right? And
Mhm.
when they do ask the question, then you start to explain and you take on the next thing. That's
Mhm.
not possible with Evergreen, right? It's
Mhm.
pre-recorded, it's
Mhm.
automated. So the messaging in an Evergreen funnel has to be crystal clear. You
Mhm.
have to be explaining things in a way that doesn't just promote curiosity, but brings clarity, so that
Mhm.
people don't feel like, oh, you know what? I want to buy, but before I do, I need to ask a million different questions, right?
Mhm.
And so again, it is so important for people to understand uh, that the two models are just completely different.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm looking at my questions that I had, and you've answered so many of them, but I'm also thinking of more in my head.
Yeah.
So, can you speak to whether this is applicable to any kind of
Mm.
interest? Because that's something I hear like, oh, that wouldn't help work for me. I do crochet or like
Yeah.
whatever.
So I'm so glad you said that, because another misconception people have is that the only people who are making money selling their course
Mm,
are people who are teaching a course about how to make money. And
mm,
I'm here to tell you that I've been in some of like the the best masterminds in the US, and the people who are making the most money are people who are teaching these really niche things, like how to play
mm,
guitar, how to do Pilates, how to use watercolor, how to quilt, how to crochet, how to meal prep, how to, do yoga, like all these
mhm,
different things.
mhm,
And they're, as part of selling something evergreen, it is your responsibility in your sales and marketing materials that you are creating that demand for people to
mhm,
want to enroll. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, the only topics you can, teach are health, wealth, and relationships. Like those are the
mhm,
big three, and anything else, forget it. And it's just not the case. I've seen it
mm,
over and over and
mhm,
over again.
mm,
Um, you know, uh, people are now looking to learn things online. A lot of times people are uh, disconnected in some ways from local communities, whereas, decades ago, if you wanted to learn how to quilt, maybe you would ask your neighbor, or maybe you would
mhm,
sign up for a sewing club or, or something like that. But people
mhm.
don't do that anymore. Now
Right.
people are looking on the internet for information on learning how to do something.
Yeah, I mean, the projected growth for the online learning business is just straight up arrow.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, and I love too that that kind of lends to just because you see anyone else with a course doesn't mean that there's not space for you as well.
Yes.
And and so I'd also love to explore like some of the support that you get in Scale with
Mm.
Success. Can
Mhm.
somebody show up with a few ideas or
Mhm.
no ideas and have someone help them kind of figure that out?
Yeah. So inside our program, we have some people who join who don't even have a course created yet. They're
Mhm.
still in the decision process. So they might be deciding between one or two different ideas. We
Mhm.
have other people joining who maybe they have an outline of a course.
Mhm.
We have other people, but they don't have any videos or anything recorded.
Mhm.
Other people, come to us and they have a course that they've actually sold before and they just want to change the way that they're selling it.
Mm.
And our program takes you on a process of starting with, first of all, getting really clear on your offer, figuring, what it is that you want to include, who exactly this product is for, your positioning around that product, the pricing, all of that.
Mhm.
And but you're not creating the program first. And so this is where a lot of people kind of get tripped up. They think that
Mhm.
in order to start selling their course, they have to have it fully created. Now, we
Mhm.
do have some people, like I said, that have sold their course before. And so they come to us, they're like, I just want to learn a new method to sell it. And that's totally fine. But what we encourage people to do is that when you start selling your course with your Evergreen funnel, if you don't have a course completed yet, don't create it.
Mhm.
Instead, create like the welcome lesson or the welcome module, and then
Mhm.
just drip out a new module over time. So if your course is, 4 weeks long or 8 weeks
Mhm.
long, then you just drip out a new module each week until it's done. And at that
Mhm.
point, you can then decide, okay, you know what? Do I want to, um, when people enroll from now on, since I have everything ready, do I want them to have access to everything? Or do I want to continue to have this content in my content portal, but do I want it to, continue to drip out over time?
Mhm.
Um, our program, we give you access to everything right away. So you have
Mm.
lifetime access to all the content,
Mhm.
everything right away, all the bonus, all the this and that and the other. And then we
Mhm.
let people go at their own pace because some people work very quickly. Like some people, when they
Yeah.
enroll because they know they want to start right away. Some people enroll because they're like, I know I want to start in 2 weeks, but I want to
Mhm.
get this now because I want to make sure I get this at, for this enrollment fee and I want this bonus package and all these different things. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to make sure I enroll now, but I can't start for 2 more weeks. So we give everyone access right away and everyone goes through at their own pace. Now, if someone has questions or if someone
Mhm.
wants feedback um, on one of their ideas, all they have to do is post it in the community. And then twice per week, I personally host live office hours. And
Mhm.
then I go through everyone's questions and I give all the feedback, I answer all the questions. And being able to do that twice a week provides a really nice cadence
Mm.
for people. And they know that everyone's working at their own pace and nobody feels like they're behind because there's always going to be someone new that is coming into the community and is
Mhm.
just getting started. And I found that a lot of times when people are selling these kind of like cohort models where everyone is starting and stopping at the same
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
there is some value to that, but it's also really hard for people who can't keep up. Like everyone is on the same track, right? Yeah. Like week one and week two, everyone's at the same pace. And then after that, it all falls apart. And then
Right.
you feel so discouraged because and
Yeah.
it's the information you're learning is no longer relevant because everyone else is way ahead. And I
Mhm.
just find that to be such a stressful
Yeah.
experience. And when I learned personally, like I want to be in control of what I'm learning and the pace I'm learning. And some weeks
Mhm.
I might go fast and some weeks I might go slow.
Mhm.
And some weeks I might just take a full-on break. So
Yeah.
I want the freedom to be able to do that. And I
Mhm.
think that there are so many benefits for students when they are enrolling in your
Yeah.
Evergreen programs.
Yeah. So that community container is just ongoing. You can be part
Yeah.
of it. See, I love that because I was part of that limited community and it just didn't work for my schedule. And then all of the information and comments and it was gone. Like I couldn't fit in that time and poof. It's like,
And what
okay.
And what some people do who do have some people give lifetime access to the content and then the
Hmm.
community they'll put a time limit on,
Mhm.
but they'll have like at a very low price point. If you want to stay an extra month, you can just pay for that extra month. Or if you want to stay
Yeah.
an extra 2 months or something like that. And I personally like that model
Mm.
because not everyone wants to stay the full time.
Mhm.
And some people might not want to renew for an entire year. Maybe they're like, you know what, I just want to stay like an extra month. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And if it's a low fee, then that's totally fine. It can be a bit problematic for the course creator if you are running a community that has lifetime access. And that
Mm.
is because your costs start to outweigh your revenue and your profit takes a big dive because the bigger the group, the more people you have to hire. The volume
Mm.
of questions is constantly going up. And
Mm.
it also kind of creates this environment where there's people that have just been in there for so long and they're not even super engaged. And so in my opinion, I like giving lifetime access to the content so people
Mhm.
can go at their own pace. But and you have to find that right
Mm.
time period because you don't want it to be too short, right? You want people
Right.
to actually be able to work through the material. But I think it is a good idea for the business owner to
Mm.
put to put a cap on the time that they are spending in that community. And if they want to renew for like
Mm.
whatever, $30 a month or what, like,
Mhm.
okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's okay. Then you can continue to have access because that at
Mhm.
least covers some of the costs. Because, I've seen so many business owners that they st- they want to over deliver and they want to do all these things, but they end up kind of in a financial hole because they're not able, they're because their
Yeah.
audience is so big, they can't cover the cost of everything that they need to be thinking about. So,
I am sure that that is somebody new to this has never thought of that. So that's really great that you have that expertise to help somebody create their offer and their container because I can really see how that could get out of hand and you're just spending more and more time trying to just respond to questions. Yeah. I love that. I mean, you've given us so much to think about, but I'm also thinking too, I know you like to tell people or give them an idea of like some of the components to, or maybe a few elements of $1 million course.
yes. The number one thing that you really have to be focused on when you are creating a course, whether you're teaching someone about quilting or teaching them how to grow an audience on Instagram, is that you want to be very specific. You
Mm,
want to make sure that you are teaching that the that you are taking people on a journey to achieve something tangible,
mm,
whether that is to create uh, a memoir or whether it is to create a portrait of your dog with watercolors, or if it's to create a friendship quilt or whatever it is, you want to be able to have a specific result. And
mm,
the reason for that is because if you are teaching a course with a topic that is too broad, right? Like quilting 101, that's not going to be of interest to people. They want to invest in a result. And so you have a much higher chance of selling that course if you're like, hey, here's how to create, you know, a friendship quilt. I don't even know what a friendship
yeah.
quilt is. I'm making it up. But
Just invented.
yeah, whatever it is that you're teaching people how to create, be very be very specific in that.
Mhm,
And just like you said, the online course industry has grown so much, and
mhm,
all that means is that the demand is high. And so if there
mhm,
are other people out there selling a course on a similar topic,
mhm,
it's an opportunity for you to position your course as unique
mhm,
and different because you might be helping people solve a similar problem, but your method of getting there is different. And like we talked
mm,
about before, there are so many different ways to arrive at the same destination, right?
mhm,
Train, automobile, whatever. And because the online course industry is so big, when people are coming to you, typically they have purchased lots of different courses in the past. They've worked with
Hmm.
coaches, they've read all the blogs, they've listened to all the podcasts, and they still haven't been able to achieve the result that they want.
Hmm.
And they are still determined to achieve it. So they're still like, I haven't gotten there yet, but I know I'm going to get there. I'm still willing to invest time, money, energy. Like I'm still willing to do this. And so what they're looking for is a different approach to doing something. And so if in your marketing or your sales materials, if your approach to solving that problem is sounds similar to what they've tried before, they're going to tune you out. They're not going to make it to the next step because they're like, oh, they'll make an assumption and they'll assume, oh, she's not teaching anything new. I already know all this.
Hmm.
So I'm going to like go on to the next thing. And so
Hmm.
it's really, really important that if you want to create a course that sells, that your topic is incredibly specific, that it is tangible, and that you are presenting your approach to achieve that result in a way that is unique and different.
Hmm. Yeah, so good. You've given us so much to think about when creating courses, but I love to talk about motherhood too, in addition to entrepreneurship. And we like to talk about what our definition of success is and how motherhood impacts that. So, how has juggling all of this and being a mom been, and what works for you, and how does that like define success for you?
I think that motherhood helped me get really clear on my priorities.
Mm.
And growing a bit, like when I first started growing my business, my daughter was a toddler, and it's like I am, on the phone with one client, and I'm with the other hand, I'm potty training someone. So it's like, and that's just the way it goes. And I'm sure all
Mhm.
of your listeners like understand that when you have kids, you're forced to prioritize. You don't
Mm,
have time to do busy work that doesn't matter.
mm,
You have to identify the most profitable tasks in your business and focus on those first. And I really think that if I didn't have kids when I started my business, I would have been number one, I would have been working around the clock on my business. I would have just
mhm.
gone all into it. I would
Yeah.
have been probably doing tons of things that I didn't even need to do
Mhm,
because I had the time to do them, right?
mhm.
And
Right.
with when you have a kid, you do not have that time. Like you're
Mhm,
working in time blocks. And
mhm,
I know for me, at least in the beginning, the time block was in the evening, right? It was like, okay, well, once she goes to bed, then I have like such and such time block until I have to go, I have to go to bed. And that's when you're really trying to squeeze in as much of the right things as possible, as much of the things
mhm.
that will actually make an impact.
Yeah. No, I think that's so insightful. So true. I think there's a rule that if you give yourself an unlimited amount of time to work
Mm,
on something, you will take it.
yes, that is
So,
true.
so I think, for anybody listening to this, like, I have a toddler, there's no way I could do this. You actually can use it to focus. If
Yeah.
you have an hour during nap time, or, God bless you if your child takes an hour nap, but
Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah.
but you've given us so much wisdom to think about. But if you could leave our listeners, especially those busy moms who are juggling their families and all the things and wanting to scale their businesses, what's something that they could take away to start that shift today?
I think the number one thing is that your business doesn't have to look like anyone else's.
Mm,
You get to define what success looks like for you.
mm,
And you know what? If it takes you a little bit longer in the beginning because you do have less time to work on it, just like the same way it was for me, that's okay. Like every single person's journey is different, and stay focused on what you need to do and don't worry about how other people are progressing. Don't
Mhm.
worry about how quickly other people are or aren't making things happen. Just focus on yourself, and and keep going. Those
Mhm.
tiny steps matter. They make such a big difference.
Yeah. They really do, and they compound over time.
Mhm.
This podcast is evidence of it.
Yeah.
170 some episodes. The will be over 200 episodes by the time this airs, and I never thought anybody would want to listen or have a conversation, but here we are.
Yeah.
So, one of the top course creator influencers out there. I appreciate your time and all of the wisdom and insight you shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.